Welcome, everyone, to another episode of HR and Payroll 2.0. I'm Pete Tiliakis, and as always, I'm joined by the legendary Julie Fernandez. Julie, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm so excited. I know you're going to move on and share who our guest is today.
I know. I'm so excited. Our first guest, it was way before we ever thought we would have a guest, but super thrilled to have this person on today. She is a thought leader, a keynote speaker, an advisor to both buyers and vendors, certainly a future of work influencer, and as I said, thought leader. She's the founder of HRTechRadar.com, where she stays very close on the pulse of the HR tech marketplace and the investments that are going on, and all around future of work expert, right? She is an HR and payroll industry veteran and now an author of a book that I have personally dug through a bit and really, really appreciate, the book, How to Select Your Next Payroll, The Ultimate Guide. And someone that I admire and stay very close with, and really, really happy to have on the very future forward, Miss Anita Lettink. So welcome to the show, Anita.
Thank you, Pete.
Yeah.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Really nice to be here. Hi, Julie. Great to have a conversation with you today.
I can't think of a
absolutely.
better first guest. So I've been aware of and worked with Anita for a number of years also. And I'm excited for us to have a good convo.
I know. I feel like our introduction barely scratches the surface of your world, Anita, and we're going to get to that more. But what I wanted to dig into first, as we always do, is market updates. And I'll be honest with you, there is a basket full of market updates this week for us to talk about, and perfect timing for you to be here, Anita, to talk about what you've seen around some of these as well. But yeah, let's dig into those if you ladies are okay with that.
Yep.
So long list here, right? First, let's get started with the first one. Business Solver. I always want to call them Benefit Solver. Business Solver, right? Benefits tech and services provider. They acquired one of their competitors, I guess you could say, a benefits admin platform provider, Workterra. I'm not terribly familiar with Workterra. Have some mild experience with Business Solver, but what are your thoughts on this, Julie? Being that you play in the space a bit.
Yeah, I would say, if you just want a quick one sentence summary, think about acquiring the acquisition of Workterra as kind of an ability to take some platform down market further. That's where I expect we'll see the bulk of the value. So I was just on some calls with them yesterday and excited to see what they do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. This is important stuff, right? Benefits keeps bubbling up as a key attractor, right? A key piece of people's lives. And certainly there's a lot, we've talked about this on the show before. There's a lot of opportunity, just like in payroll, to still do some disruption here. So it's good to see some of these firms getting together and maybe combining powers. The next one, Wilson HCG. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that one. That's an RPO, recruiting process outsourcing provider that I know I've done a little bit of work with, and an all around sort of total talent provider. They've gotten deeper in the EMEA region by acquiring a South African-based tracking talent, or the firm Tracking Talent based in South Africa, which really provides talent solutions to organizations primarily in the financial and commercial space. So it looks like they're doing some regional growth there and adding some capability in the EMEA region to help service some of their customers and maybe dipping deeper into an area that they might not be now. So more talent that way getting together. Another one, iCIMS. So we all probably know iCIMS, the recruiting and ATS provider. They've picked up Skills Survey. It is a provider of skills verification and digital reference checking and credentialing. So Anita, I know with your blockchain work, you've probably sniffed around the whole credentialing world a little bit, and this is becoming more and more important, particularly as people onboard talent today, making that more AI driven and automated. And I think that gives them a really rich set of skill-based capabilities to help companies, sort of source candidates and identify the behaviors and skills and capabilities that will direct them to the best fit roles. So, and the success in their role. So I think that's right on par with what we're seeing in sort of the skills world, is some of these ATSs and other platforms beefing up that capability. Any thoughts so far on those, ladies?
Yeah, I think from a skills perspective, anything that you can add at this point in time helps you sell your solution, right? Because skills, everyone I talk to at this week or this month is asking me about skills, how to manage them, how to identify them, how to certify them. It's a topic that is front of mind for many HR leaders.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we talk about this war for talent, but it really is a war for skills, right? People really looking for the capabilities that can help them get the work done that they need in their world. So, yeah, you are seeing a lot more skills capability coming into a number of different solutions. So it almost reminds me of the employee experience piece, right, where everything is becoming an experience platform. It makes you wonder if skills will get incorporated into really everything.
I was just going to say that, Pete, where we just talked about how experience was splattered everywhere this year at some of the tech conferences. And I'm just waiting to see if skills replaces that, or skills and talent replace that next year.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. It's going to be interesting, as we go forward. Okay, we're barely even halfway. We've got more. There's so much activity this week. So the next one, people analytics platform provider Visier. I know that's an area that is incredibly important. They acquired Booster, which again, along the skills world, adds skills intelligence engine to Visor's people analytics, right? So those two things are coming closer together. And it really gives them a deeper set of benchmarks and insights around the skills element in the talent lifecycle. You can use that around recruiting, retention, learning, and a number of things. So again, along the skills line, Visor putting their rich analytic capability, pairing that with skills-based information and insights that I think is going to be, just as we talked about, incredibly valuable to firms, navigating the talent space going ahead. And then another one, Paycor, HCM payroll provider, HCM platform provider, really for the small market and mid market. They've shored up their recruiting capability with a new acquisition of Talenya. I'm not familiar with Talenya, but I do know they're an AI-enabled recruiting platform. Talent was an area I think for, with many of these SMB HCMs, they really start in the core, right? They start with core HR, payroll, time, benefits, and their talent is typically marketplace stuff that they connect. Paycor had some recruiting capability already. I think where they had to partner was with learning and some other things. So this obviously brings an AI sort of slant to that and beefs up their recruiting capability and starts to build out their talent a little bit more. And then the big one, I think the one that Anita, you and I have had a lot of conversations, at least trading some chats on, and I've had plenty of conversations this week from folks around around the market that has, ironically created a ripple effect in this announcement is Rippling, has taken their solution global. And I mean, global. They are claiming to now have 50 countries native for HR, payroll, benefits, time, and expenses, plus adding, administrative services as well as EOR capabilities native, they're claiming, on top of that. So really, really interesting here. This has a lot of vendors sort of scratching their head as to how they did this. There's a lot of firms I think are sort of not surprised, but I think a few that are surprised. I'm not surprised, just knowing what I know of Rippling and the investments that they've been making in development. So yeah, big announcement. This is really, really shaking everybody up a little bit. But Anita, what's your 2 cents on what Rippling's doing here and what it means for the market?
I agree with you. If you've been following Rippling for a while, this was not really a surprise. Maybe the moment was, but that they were coming out with a solution like this, that was what they were working for or aiming for, right?
Yeah.
Especially also with Conrad Parker's history with Zenefits, where he also had established a new type of payroll. I think what everyone is now wondering is this really one engine? And I saw some notes around, payroll being 80% global and 20% local. That is not new, right? Yeah. That is what all the global payroll vendors have been saying for the last 2 decades. And that was also the reason that they were able to standardize on single engines that were running multiple countries. I think where it gets interesting is when you start to understand what kind of services model they are running on top of it. Because for small entities, having some kind of service, that's usually not a big deal. You have a payroll service and it runs every month and that is it. Where the big money, of course, is in the large volume payrolls, and high employee numbers. Maybe that's not a market that they are interested in. Maybe, but if you are if you're staying down market, you have to add a lot of volume for this to be profitable. So really curious to see which route they are going to take and what kind of companies, what kind of complexities they are able to onboard on this.
Yeah, agreed. I think you're right. I think this is probably a bit more down market, right, targeted, and much more of a. I will tell you where I think that these firms, Rippling and maybe even some of their peers that have come into the space where they've done really well, is creating such an automated process, I guess you could say, such a technology driven process that they are able to keep their costs very low, right? To have a very automated, sort of streamlined, solution. But what I'm curious about, to your point, is the in country downrange sort of subsequent activities. Like how do they enable those things? Not sure if there's partners there, or it sounds all organic, but I wonder if maybe there was some fold in acquisitions or something that we just didn't hear about. But yeah, I mean, the aggressive nature at which they've attacked modernizing payroll and HR, if you will, and really, trying to make it as simplified and as Silicon Valley-esque as they can. Mm-hmm. I think they've done a really good job of that, and it is going to be interesting to see now how they scale this, whether they can come up market. I get the impression that upmarket is actually where the goal is, because if you look at some of the things they've added, like spend management and some of the maybe finance sort of slanting things, they are doing more than HR, right? They are offering businesses, particularly smaller businesses, more value than just that. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if they do have a Workday type aspiration or something like that. But this has really put I think this has really put a lot of firms, I wouldn't say on their heels, but definitely making them sort of look at what they're doing. And I think that we're going to probably see more tech from them to come. And I think there's probably going to be more growth for sure. It'll just be interesting to see what the uptake is and what kind of clients they're picking up from this. So,
yeah. I say from the client perspective, one of the things most clients are first to ask for is that kind of tier one, field my questions from employees and managers. And that is, kind of the impossible nut to crack with smaller tail countries, right? Yeah. And in fact, many of the multi-country regional or global providers a decade ago, as they were working on their model, had to quickly kind of abandon trying to do that degree of servicing and focus on just being available to the countries. So it'll be great to, like you say, to watch it and see if they have any intentions. I also thought I'd toss in one that came up today, Pete. On SD Works acquiring Intelligo.
Yes,
and
I saw that.
You guys had just described, payroll 80% local and 20% global. And here, they're really looking at acquiring a payroll solution specifically for Ireland. And, that's oftentimes how parts of this work. Get your local payroll engine in place and then build around that. And so that's hot off the press.
Yeah. That one's very on brand for SD Works. They've done a lot of growth by acquisition, and I think that it's interesting because they do have aspirations of sort of being the I'll stop short of calling them the ADP of Europe, but they are kind of, right. They've really become kind of a very big footprint. They're able to support a number of different countries. I think 18 or 20 now under their belt that they own, either have acquired or have developed. So they really are a very pan-European specialist, if you will, with certainly a global capability with their partners. But I think this is the sort of thing that we're going to continue to see more of, right? More disruption and innovation, but also more acquisitions where firms are trying to maybe shore up a regional capability or maybe add some sort of engine, here or there. But I like it. I like the fact that we're having this sort of volatility, right? And I do like the fact that you're seeing firms like Rippling with a very heavy Silicon Valley sort of leadership team really putting a different spin on and a different viewpoint on payroll and trying to really innovate and disrupt it. So I think that's what it needs, and I'm excited to see for more of it to come.
Yeah, because it's now that I'm listening to you two, it is also two sides of a coin almost. Right? Yeah. Like Rippling coming in from the global angle and moving into the local space on this one engine. And then SD Works doing the exact opposite thing, acquiring a local payroll engine or local payroll solution to service their in-country clients.
Yeah.
So and fair to say there's everything in between, every variation in between, right?
Right.
When you look at others in the market. So Pretty cool.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, we'll see. I don't anticipate this is, look, this is going to be very indicative, I think, right? We're sitting here talking about what, 7 or so major deals, 6 major deals, in 1 week, right? Like that's impressive. And I think you're going to see more, especially as our economy kind of cools down. And you've got some of these valuations maybe becoming more realistic. Firms are getting together, right? In one way or the other. And so, yeah, I think we're going to see more of it as we go forward.
Yeah, because that I track the numbers both
Yes.
for investments and acquisitions, and the number of acquisitions this year is already higher.
Yes,
which wasn't the case last year.
Yeah.
Oh, and we're certainly planning on getting to that in some detail, right?
Oh, okay.
Pete, did you have any? I'm sure you got another 1 or 2 in your basket, right?
No, I've got one more really small one. So LRP Media, this was actually the week before last, I think. LRP Media, the owner of HR Tech Conference, which we all love to go to. They also own the Ed Tech Conference. They have sold both of that body of portfolio of work to a company called ARC. I don't recall, but I want to say they were maybe based in France or Europe somewhere. But this it elevates ARC's footprint in the U.S., and makes investments in 2 very long running, right? The HR Tech Conference, I think, has been there. We just hit the 25th year. And the Ed Tech, I think, has been there a lot longer, double that. So it's nice to see that these 2 very important conferences are going to continue to thrive, and certainly someone's continuing to invest in them. So I thought that was really, really awesome. And that's it for market news. I did want to talk about a couple of conference recaps real quick, if that's okay on that segue. But yeah. Enough about the acquisitions, I guess, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I just came back from the California Payroll Conference. I'll just say it's a mini version of the APA's annual Congress, and super event, right? It's great to get out there and see these frontline managers and leaders that are running these conferences. But what I want to say about this, and this is sort of a call to all vendors, if you will. One of the things I learned about this conference was how organic and grassroots these regional conferences actually are. They're run by actual APA members, right? CPPs who are out there running payroll every day. There were literally a few of the main conference staff actually had to stop to run payroll on Thursday or Wednesday or whatever it was, or to go and oversee and make sure people were getting paid. And there were some major companies there as well. So some very important payrolls. But the point is these guys actually put their personal time into it. It's not like your typical sort of grand event where it's a money making thing. These guys are really just sort of cultivating their community, and I think it's incredibly important that vendors know that, because the vendors are actually really the lifeblood of those regional events, and without them, it's really hard for them to have these. So I just want to say thank you to all the vendors who do contribute to those. And I think that they should look for opportunities to do so, even if they don't believe they can actually attend. So, for example, UKG, right? They did a big, I think they gave bags and they sponsored some other things. They weren't physically there, but they made a contribution to the event that actually really helped the community be able to get together and have their event. So, just want to say to vendors, think about these as more than just kind of your standard event where you're doing booths and you're having your big expo, and that's all important. But even if you can't be there, if you can just make, a contribution on behalf of your brand to these regional conferences, they're incredibly important to the industry continuing to that you really are selling to, right? If you think about it, continue to cultivate them. And so I just want to say to all vendors, think about that when you're looking at some of these smaller, and I'm sure the other service areas too, right? Benefits and recruiting and others have regional conferences. I know learning does. All of those are very critical to these spaces and to the practitioners. So that's all. I just got off my soapbox about that one, but I'm excited to hear about Unleash. I didn't go, and Julie wasn't able to make it either. We'd love to hear you give us maybe a little recap of that. And I'll make sure that your blog, I know you did a great blog on that. We'll make sure you put that in the links here so people can access that. But yeah, we'd love to hear what you learned at Unleash.
Yeah, absolutely. It was the first big HR Tech event in Europe after the pandemic. And so a lot of people were, for the first time, on a live face-to-face basis. And that probably explains part of the excitement and the atmosphere at Unleash.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think people have they need this stuff, right? Like when you talk to people, I'm sure you notice as you're talking to people, people are out there making decisions. There really are, or at least trying to solve things. And I think there's a lot of legwork that buyers are needing to do, and they've not been able to do it, right? They haven't been able to get out there. So that's some of it.
Yeah, the comparison hasn't been easy, right? You're looking at websites, but you don't really see vendors' personnel. You cannot just walk around the corner and look at another demo. So I think it was for the first time, it was well visited. People were happy. Presentation quality was great for the keynotes that I went to.
Yeah.
And what I especially enjoyed was that there was a good mix of, I'm going to say, the traditional vendors, the somewhat newer vendors, and then they had these startup desks.
That's always a fun one.
Yeah. Where you see a lot of...
Hi, I'm Stephen Rothberg.
And I'm Jeanette Leeds.
And together, we're the co-hosts of the High Volume Hiring Podcast.
Are you involved in hiring dozens or even hundreds of employees a year? If so, you know that the typical sourcing tools, tactics, and strategies, they just don't scale.
Yeah. Our bi-weekly podcast features news, tips, case studies, and interviews with the world's leading experts about the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to high-volume hiring.
Make sure to subscribe today.
Young companies that really are just starting out, or they have created something nifty and they won a couple of clients and now they have some money to go and position themselves at a conference like Unleash and hopefully attract some more clients. And I enjoyed being part of that. And also I was a judge on the startup competition. This was something new that they had. Yeah, it was 30 participants. And we had to score them about a week before Unleash. Yeah. And then the 5 winners were able to present in front of a live group of judges. And one lucky winner won $100,000 in investment and $50,000 from Unleash for next year.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah. That's a big boost for a small firm. And anything in that catch your eye that you thought was really interesting?
Well, I thought that the company that won, it's called One Team. It's a small Dutch company.
Nice.
They have created a solution for the front desk or the deskless worker, frontline workers, right? And the reason why they developed it was because one of them had worked in a grocery store or supermarket or something and got all his messages and information through WhatsApp, as you know, very popular here on this side of the ocean.
Yeah.
And that was such a hassle that he thought, we must do this better. There must be a better way to communicate with frontline workers. Yeah. And so he set out to create this app. Everything is done through the app. There's no desktop version.
Ah, interesting.
And so I thought, the idea, so there is a problem, you've experienced the problem, you set out to create a solution, and now you're here presenting it to all these people at Unleash, and you win. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, that is a great story. There's a few like that in the space. Quinix, I believe, is another one similar, right? There was a gentleman, I think, working at McDonald's in that case, and he found a better way to do time, right? So yeah, I love it. That's good stuff. Yeah. What else about Unleash did you like? What did you see? What did you think? I looked like they had they always do have amazing speakers at the event. Mark Coleman and team does a great job.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. And he also has a lot of volunteers working with him every year, right?
Yeah.
It's always a great opportunity for people from all around Europe to come and help at that conference. And that also it's part of the atmosphere that, that's there at Unleash. Well, a couple of other observations. There are now so many solutions in HR that it's no wonder that we were talking about these M&A events, right? I think we've gone a little bit too far, to be honest, in the amount of point solutions that are out there.
Yeah.
I don't think that is sustainable, especially not if they just address one particular problem, because a CHRO doesn't think in I have one problem and I need to solve it with this solution, and I have another problem. Oh, let me look at another solution.
Yeah.
I don't think they mind that you have something for talent and something for L&D and something for core HR and payroll. That's accepted. But above and beyond that, you cannot keep buying point solutions and making the most of that, right? You cannot do that to your people.
Agreed. Yeah, we talked about this a little bit, Julia, right? About the whole, when we came back from HR Tech, the fact that there's so much employee experience out there. And a lot of it is driven on the fact that people are using like 10 and 15 apps at the enterprise level anyway. And maybe even at the smaller level are using 10 to 15 different things in their daily lives that are, you know how it is. It's confusing, right? Like, where do I log in? What do I go to for this? What do I go to for that? And I think that's where this opportunity for all this employee experience is coming into play. So yeah, you're right. There's a flood of things in the market that eventually are probably going to get folded in as some sort of point, capability to someone's broader capability. But yeah, I mean, I love it though. I think we need this in this space, right? We need more and more ideas and disruption and people bringing things to the table that challenge what's there, because what's there isn't necessarily getting it done, right? We've seen plenty of data on that, So
yeah, and then so there were quite a few booths in the area of mental health.
Yeah.
Also running over or spilling over in financial health.
Yeah.
And I always think that, it's not just mental health. If you want to bring a holistic solution to people, you have to include financial health, because it's so closely related. And the interesting thing there, I think, is that employers are moving a little bit further into the personal domain of employees by helping them through these types of issues, which was something that was unacceptable or unthinkable just a couple of years ago, right? That your employer would support you with that. Well, that has completely changed through the pandemic.
Yeah, and I echo that for sure. We have had a string of client engagements looking specifically, very broadly actually at total rewards and, what to bring into the portfolio to attract and retain talent. Oftentimes first, trying to emphasize to existing workforce the value, right, of their employment proposition, and also then to attract and retain. And so I'm not sure that's necessarily going to slow down as long as we feel like there's a talent crisis or employers are having trouble figuring out how to get the right talent with the right skills in the right place. I think it all fits together, right, into the bigger picture.
Yeah, totally. Well, very good. Anything else about Unleash, Anita?
Well, maybe just my last observation was that there were no new payroll engines or time engines or benefits engines. So I think there is, and I know that they're out there. It's maybe just a little bit too early. So I do expect that we will see some movement and disruption there maybe next year or the year after.
Yeah, I would agree. Where's Rippling there? That's a question. Did they obviously they didn't unveil this that week, but I'm curious if they were there. Did they exhibit?
Good question.
I remember seeing them talk about doing so. I follow them. But
maybe not. I know that Deal was there.
Yeah. Maybe they purposely did that, right? To make a bigger splash, make it more about them. So,
or maybe they were there and I just missed them because there were too many booths.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, it sounds like it was awesome. And again, kudos to Mark Coleman and his team. They do a great job. You're absolutely right. Their whole team is amazing. And I always enjoyed being there and working with them. And so, hopefully we can be there next year. That'll be awesome.
That would be great.
Where is it next year, by the way?
In Paris.
Oh, back in Paris. Okay. Well, beautiful.
The location couldn't have been better. It was awesome.
Awesome. Yeah. That's great. Well, good deal. Okay. So look, let's maybe pivot now. And we want to make this about you, Anita. We got a lot of questions. We want to learn things and talk about what you've been doing. And I know I follow you on Twitter. We talk occasionally, but I know there's a lot more below the surface that probably goes on in your world. We'd love to dig into that with you.
Yeah, same here. And as we dive into that, Anita, it seems like a really logical starting point to talk about some of the private equity market and all of these mergers and acquisitions and the organizational changes, because you publish, track, and follow all of that sorts of stuff. And I've been a huge fan of your commentary on that for social media posts, and wondering, like, how did you get into that? And what do you officially track and publish?
Sure. Yeah. So when I was at NGA, way back when, as you remember, I was responsible for strategy and partnerships and external comms. And because I was often approached by young companies who had something to show us or who wanted to work with us. And that's how I got involved with a couple of these young vendors, I would say, because very often they were just not large enough or maybe not yet mature enough for us to consider working together. When I left NGA, the pandemic started. And so my sabbatical turned into a home vacation. But that was also the moment that a couple of them reached out to me and said, well, we now have, there are no events, there are no conferences, CHROs have something else on their mind. So what are we going to do now? And I decided that I was able to help them through my network, but also because I had time. So I worked with a couple of them, and I started to get really interested in, first of all, in what they were doing, but also they were looking at HR from a completely different angle with a completely different mindset than what I had been used to with the large vendors that we all know and love. And I thought that was so refreshing. As you know, NGA was a private equity owned company for the longest time. So I had some contacts in that world, and they started to reach out to me and say, hey, we're thinking of investing in this or that company. Can you take a look? Because we want to have an independent opinion. Right. And, through all these contacts, I discovered that there's really no one that is focused on what is happening in the HR tech investment space. And there's something that we can learn from what is happening there, because where investors put their money, it's where they think they will see a return, right? And so it's an early indication of what will become the trend in in customer sales in 2 or 3 years. And it is not always true, of course, but and so one of the things that I discovered through this work, obviously, before it even started to happen, was that there was so much interest in these global workforce solutions, right? It was like millions and millions of dollars were put into these companies that were paying the workforce in countries where you don't have operations. And even to this date, that is still a large portion of investments from all kinds of people. So the interesting thing, I think, is that sometimes from a functionality perspective, you think, is that really what people need? But then from an investment perspective, they seem to be convinced that that is something that people need. And I try to match that, what I see at the customer side with what I see from an investment perspective. And then I try to figure out is there really something there? And I think because I can combine those two almost opposite insights, I sometimes come up with some ideas that might be a little bit different from what a private equity vendor would write, or an investment agency would write, or what an HR trend watcher would write.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
100%. I think you have a very unique point of view, Anita. And you're right. It felt like it seems like over the last 2 years, as an analyst, I was having more and more of my subscribers and conversations were equity firms. Wall Street folks. And, and I was just finding that I was actually working with them as much, if not more than with vendors. And then of course, buyers here and there. But it was fascinating. And I always felt like some of these firms were just placing bets on things they didn't even really understand, to be honest. They were just betting on human capital management. Right.
Yeah,
and so
that wouldn't be surprising, would it?
Yeah. And look, it's one of those things you need, whether the market's up or down. Right. And I think that a lot of firms probably understood that during the pandemic, right? Those that didn't invest didn't come out, the other side as prepared as the others. And I think that everyone had, to your point, Anita, the time to sniff around these things and really start to, place some bets. But a lot of them were there's some very big bets that I think were placed that I wonder if they're going to pan out. Some of these valuations are insane. What do you think about that just in general, Anita? Just the astronomical valuations that you're seeing in the space these last few years?
Look, valuation is just a number. This is something that I've learned, right? Valuation, it can be 5x or 6x or whatever number you want to put on it. That does not mean that you have the revenue or the EBITDA to back that up.
Yeah, good point.
It's a future valuation. And for some companies that turns out well, I would even argue that I put out this unicorn list, right? So all these companies that are valued at $1 billion or more, probably half of them are now below that, simply because the market has changed.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Yuli.
No, well, I was going to say, I know I've had some conversations with you before about, is that sustainable? And, do you see it slowing? Are there any predictions? I mean, I guess beyond this banner year, right? It can't go on forever. And I love the fact that we've had some conversation around an award or an investment also has, kind of strings or milestones attached to it. And just because there's been some funding that's been awarded doesn't mean that the company will be able to reach the goals that allow it to continue to access, that funding. And that to me has just been a golden nugget of, a reminder, keeping it in perspective.
Because everyone always says, well, we raised 55 million, right? But it's not like, oh, by tomorrow you have 55 million in the bank and
exactly
whatever you do with it is fine, right? It doesn't work that way. And it's just seemed that there was this endless amount of money available. And to your point, Pete, with the trends last year when everyone was talking about the Great Resignation, suddenly you saw the shift from talent management that was second after HCM and Pay, and then talent acquisition became second after HCM and Pay, right? Because we were talking about the Great Resignation, and suddenly everyone was investing in all these talent acquisition solutions, whether they worked or not. If you look at 2019 and then, the subsequent years, we went from around 3, maybe 4 billion a year to 12 billion last year.
Wow.
Yeah. And the first 3 quarters of this year were together were 9 billion. So you think, well, we're on track, but the pace has really slowed. So we won't get to 12 billion this year, I think. But even if we don't, it's 20 billion, more than 20 billion that has been invested in the HR tech space in 2 years. It's
incredible.
It's unprecedented. We've never seen that kind of money flow into HR tech. So I'm really excited for, the disruption and the solutions that are coming onto the market, because let's face it, we have all worked with the big vendors. It was high time that some young folks came around and started to shake them up and showed them that there are other solutions that work equally well or maybe even better, so that they don't become complacent.
Yeah, no, you're right. But the good thing is about all of that investment is it's actually fueling this innovation, right? We were talking about Rippling earlier. I think I recall, and correct me, you probably know this. I think they got about 700 or so million, right, in funding, either once or over last year. And so, right, you can see where this money is going. It's going into massive efforts to innovate and develop. So I think it's actually really refreshing too on the other side, right? That money is being put out there. Because without it, you couldn't do this stuff. You couldn't disrupt.
No.
So it is a blessing.
It's certainly fueling our basket of announcements, right? In many ways that we see. And And, in and among all of those, I wanted to also maybe ask a little bit, Anita, about fintech, because that's another area, where I think that you have some great insights and are asking a lot of thought-provoking questions around the fintech market. So maybe can you just tell for our listeners, how do you define what is fintech, and how did you get involved in that? What are some of the things that are happening there that, people might want to know?
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason that I started to look at fintech was I was looking actually for new payroll engines, couldn't find them. And then I started to think about, so where is financial disruption taking place? And that led me to fintech. And
the Use Case podcast is where technology vendors get to talk about themselves. And it's a wonderful place for vendors, investors, and practitioners to listen to the story of the solution, the features, the benefits, the attributes, etc. And we get to know the CEO or founder during the call, and we also get to know the tech. So subscribe to the Use Case podcast.
Hi there, I'm Peter Zollman. I'm a co-host of the Inside Job Boards and Recruitment Marketplaces podcast.
And I'm Stephen Rothberg, and I guess that makes me the other co-host.
Every other week, we're joined by guests from the world's leading job sites.
Together, we analyze news about general, niche, and aggregator job board and recruitment marketplaces sites.
Make sure you sign up and subscribe today.
As you know, our banking system everywhere is kind of traditional and runs even on mainframes in some places and all kinds of other old servers. And it is often very difficult for banks to pull all the information that they have on someone together. Fintechs are creating the so-called neobanks. They have no legacy, so they can take advantage of all the new technology that is available. It can be cloud-based. They can use the latest databases. And for them, it's much easier to create a holistic overview of a customer where they consider all of their purchases, all of their monthly payments, everything they look at, what kind of other financial services they procure. And that data is worth a lot of money. And as I started to track them, I discovered that the one piece in their data set that is missing is the payroll piece, right? So where does that money originate? Where does it come from? And how is that structured? And if they could get a hold of that, that would make their data set even more rich. And as you know, they do something with that data. Basically, they sell it or they use it for insights. And I thought with all the money that was already raised in fintech, there must be people that are going after payroll because it's such, let's say, relatively small step. I know it's complex, but ultimately it's a small step from fintech to being a payroll provider. Well, in the meantime, we have a bank in England that now caters to employers and employees and also offers a simple payroll. And the focus of all of that, obviously, is that the money never has to leave the bank until something is being paid with it. But you now know what an employer does with their money. You know what the employee does with their money. And so you have an even richer data set. Plaid is a company that is also headed in that direction where they are very skilled in tying all kinds of financial systems together. So when you think of payroll and payments in terms of financial data, then suddenly this connection starts to make a whole lot of sense. And I think we're only seeing the beginning here. And more fintechs, as they realize what is going on in payroll and how that would work to their advantage, will move into some sort of payroll service, maybe not a service, but at least a solution or a payroll engine, I think.
Yeah. An adjacent capability for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We see sometimes that fintech market, when it's stratified, paytech, right, kind of emerges and hits some of those areas that are directly related to payroll. But, so for HR and payroll leaders, thinking about what those touch points are and what capabilities the providers have. I mean, seems to be starting in the daily pay earned wage access area as one of the early ones. ACH. Like, what do you have on your radar, Anita?
I'm sorry, the ACH?
Oh, the ACH, or the movement of money specifically to pay employees, or the banking side, right? Banking and treasury side.
Right. Yeah, and there, I would say Europe and the United States are completely different. I saw an announcement this week about financial services in the United States now offering people to withdraw the money the day it actually arrives in the bank, not 2 days later when it gets to their bank account. I had to read it like 2 or 3 times before I understood what it was, because here in Europe, the banking regulation says the moment that your money hits the bank, it's in your account. There's no 2-day delay, for instance. So I think the way that banks are structured, and especially within the European Union with IBAN, has tremendously changed the speed of with which payments arrive in our bank accounts. And of course, everyone here has direct deposit because it's mandatory. It's a way we have never had, or let's say in the last decades, we haven't had paper checks. Everything is electronic. And through the pandemic, that move to digital payments was accelerated. There are a few exceptions. Germany is a country where still a lot of cash is being used, but everywhere else, I don't bring cash. I have my cards, my debit cards, and I can pay with them everywhere, in a supermarket in Austria, or buy some food in Spain. It doesn't matter. I use my debit card.
Yeah. There's a lot of places won't take your cash at all.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, I saw some after Unleash. I saw a couple of announcements or a couple of tweets from American friends that said, well, they didn't want to take my euros.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I think we are getting to much more of a digital on-demand capability when it comes to our payments and our accepting of money as well, right? What are your thoughts, Anita, on the fact that I just looked it up actually this morning before our call. There's 112 countries now that are focused on developing some sort of development level of whether it's exploration or actually near live with a CDBC, right? A digital version of their fiat.
Right.
Do you think that will accelerate that sort of usage as well? I mean, I believe it will. And I think you're right. You're already seeing people not taking funds from cash, right? You're seeing a lot of the Venmo, right? How often do you get friends that'll say, yeah, I owe you $50. What's your Venmo, right? It's never like, hey, I'll give you a $50 bill later. But I think that certainly some countries are way more forward on this than others. I think China and some of the other areas, maybe Singapore, are way out there. But how much do you think that's going to accelerate maybe people going away from actual cash and going to these more digital solutions, digital native stuff?
For many, I think it has already happened, because I understand that, we're working towards these digital currencies. And I also know that in my mind that they're not the same as my current euro that sits in a bank. But I never hold a euro in my hand anymore.
Exactly. Right?
Yeah.
On paper.
So money is now digital. And yes, I know that I can I can go to an ATM and I can get my euros, but no one wants to take them, like you just mentioned, or not many people want to take them anymore. And we pay with our phones. So that whole shift to digital money, even though it's still euros behind it, and then maybe in the future it will be some sort of euro coin, to me, it doesn't really make a difference in the way that I use it.
Yeah.
But I completely understand that the infrastructure behind it is obviously different.
Yeah. It's going to be very interesting. I do think digital native solutions and capabilities and money movement is certainly where we're going to end up. It's just curious to see what it's going to actually really look like in the end, right? So yeah, exciting stuff.
And trust issues, right? I think that's where, it's taken a while for folks to move to cards and to doing things without cash in hand. And I think trust is one of the big components that has to be worked through in order to get to digital currencies some way, shape, or form.
I think you're absolutely right, because you can also see that now with the so-called crypto winter, where all those crypto coins, they devalued quite quickly, and people are not quite sure what to make of it, even though a few of them are still very, very focused on Bitcoin, for instance, or on Ether or some other cryptos. I think we're seeing I would say, a necessary constriction, just because there was so much fluff in that market and everyone was creating their own coins, right? That is unsustainable. And that goes to your point, Julie. If you don't trust the company or the entity that gives these coins to you or that publishes these coins, then what are you going to do?
Right.
So I think we're going to a phase that is actually very helpful, because it teaches us about some areas of crypto and crypto coins that we were not so familiar with, or where we had assumptions, and now we see that pan out in practice. So I consider this as a little bit of a learning phase, where we figure out what could potentially work and what can't work.
Yeah. We're testing.
We're test driving it. Yes. And in the meantime, a lot of people lost a lot of money.
Yes.
Trust and stability, right? So we have to add stability to trust. Awesome. Thank you. So maybe we can start to drive down a little bit to payroll trends and disruptors, and so that we can maybe segue into talking a little bit about your new book. But when we're thinking about payroll trends and disruptors, what do you see, as the things that are shaping our way forward, or what excites you the most, I guess, about things going on in payroll?
Well, I think we talked about it earlier, but an announcement like Ripplinks excites me in a way, because now I want to know what's going on there. What have they solved that the others were unable to solve so far? Have they found a trick? What is it that allows them to do this on a single engine? Because I've looked at several companies that said they had solved this, but then when you look a little closer, what they do is they say, for instance, give me your payslip, and I look at your deductions and I create your next payslip. Yeah, that's nice. But when something changes, what then happens, right? From a policy perspective, because I can very easily run a payslip in Excel with all the deductions. That is not the problem. It's the constant maintenance and the constant adjustment to legislation and taxation and social security that makes payroll super complex. And you need to find a way to take care of all of that. So there is something more than just an engine. And when someone comes out and says, I've solved that, I want to know how.
We all want to dive into the weeds and make sure it's not just smoke and mirrors, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. It's good though. It puts I think it puts the market on notice, right? It steps everybody's game up. So I like it. Just like I love, the Microsofts and the Facebooks and the big techs of the world that are dipping into HR a little bit. I think they're bringing money and also just outside in thinking that I hopefully is going to make some movement, right, for the industry. So I think it's good all around for everyone. It's a win-win-win,
Maybe that makes it a great time to just kind of segue into your book, Anita. I know we're excited to talk about it. Pete and I have both, given a look through and found plenty of things to get excited about. And so why don't we jump into there? How to select your next payroll, right?
Right.
And it helps definitely give an overview, especially for folks that might be familiar with sourcing, or they might be familiar with payroll from a practitioner side, but it's not something that they do regularly. And so I'm just super excited to to talk to you about the book and learn a little bit about what your driver was behind writing it and how it's been received. And Pete, I know you'd love to share some of your thoughts about it as well.
Yeah. I've actually read it a few times, Anita. So I'm really proud and proud for you. I'm really happy to see that you did it. So congratulations.
Thank you.
I think that it's an incredibly, I think it simplifies an incredibly complex process that is not simple, right? Is a good way of saying it. I think you make it very, it's almost like payroll for dummies in a lot of ways, right? People who maybe don't understand, when you buy HR and you buy payroll, you're not, it's not like buying servers or staples or folders or something, right? It's way different. And there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of people who have to bless it and be a part of it. And I think you do a really good job of making it simple, for people to understand. So yeah, I really appreciate you writing the book. And how's it gone? I mean, what's been the reception for it so far?
It's been really good. I thought that I would sell a couple of copies, but I would use most of it as marketing material. But in fact, the opposite is happening, to the point where actually payroll vendors are buying it and giving away copies to their clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah, that was an unexpected situation, I think. Really what I tried to do with the book was, when I was with NGA back in the day, I had already noticed how much of a knowledge gap exists between a vendor and a buyer, right?
Yeah.
And that meant that during the sales process, you were often very busy educating the client, take them along so that they understood what they were buying and that you could ultimately come to a contract. And sometimes they engaged external advisors, like Pete, like Julie, like you. But not all of them do. Some don't have the budget. Some don't know that it is available. And then sometimes bad things happen. And this year, a lot of bad things happened. And I was reading the newspaper and tracking a number of, I would say, payroll go lives gone wrong. And it really started to bug me. And I started to read up and try to understand, is this now one vendor? Is this now one solution? What is going on here? And I discovered that it was not one vendor. It was all of them. And it was not one solution. It was all of them. And so I started to reach out to some people to really understand what is going on here. And let's say the common denominator was that something went wrong early on in the process, but because you have a burning platform that you need to move off of, you need to go live on January 1st, and then, okay, we go. And of course, it isn't right. Some pay slips are better than others, but for the people that don't get paid, consequences are dire in the sense that they cannot pay their mortgages, insurances, car payments, and some of them even end up at the food bank, which is an awful situation for these people. And at the same time, that often leads to magazine articles and newspaper announcements. So not good for anyone.
Yeah, it's not a good look for the industry. This summer, it felt like we were reading another major vendor failure in the space, and I hate to see that for the profession, for all around, because especially when you read some of it was self-inflicted. If you read between the lines on a few of those stories, but it's very disappointing. And as we sit here and we've spent a good close to an hour now talking about all this innovation in payroll, and yet we're looking at vendors that are having these massive public failures. It's very unfortunate, and I think it's probably indicative of a few things, but that we could go off onto a tangent of. But it is concerning, right? That this stuff is becoming. You feel like we should be beyond this now with all the technology and capability that we have. But yeah, no, good point though about your book. I mean, I think it's one of those. I think it's a guidebook, right, for people to understand how to get this right. And I wish every sourcing and HR leader out there doing this selection. And I think you could even take your book and apply it to other areas of HR if you really wanted to be honest. Other parts of HR outsourcing, you could take a framework and still use that same model. It would work, I believe, for more than payroll.
Yeah, I think what I really wanted to do is I focused on the buyer.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to equip them well and have them maybe pause and take a step back and think through all the steps that they need to take before they even reach out to a vendor, right?
Yeah.
Do you have the right information? Do you have clean data? Have you thought about your processes? Have you thought about your policies? What are you even trying to solve? Because I think one of the major issues or one of the major questions that you need to ask yourself before you even embark on a new payroll is what is the problem that I'm trying to solve? And does that really mean that I need to replace payroll in all the countries where I operate? Or could I do something creative and leave what works in place and only, replace the burning platforms or the ones where I'm not happy, and combine all of that and then use insights through an overlay, for instance. So instead of just saying, well, I'm going to go for global payroll, because as we all know, there's hardly ever a business case for global payroll, and the project always gets more expensive. It takes longer. It is a really difficult undertaking to rip out the payroll in each country that you operate in. And I think there are smarter ways to do this. And technology has allowed us to become a little bit more creative, and we should take advantage of that. So long story short, I hope to better equip the buyers so that they're more on equal footing with the vendors. I mean, they do this every day. They know front to back what works and what doesn't. And sometimes that conversation can be a little bit unbalanced, I think.
Yeah,
certainly. And I think you raised a really good point around even things that involve setting expectations right from the front, because I find the same thing. Many clients will come to me with the notion that they want to find a global payroll solution. They equate that to a single provider. They equate that to all countries being included in the model. And while that might be a long-term vision, it's probably very unrealistic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if the expectations aren't set early on, and as early on as in the contracting, right? I mean, why would you want to contract for things that, are a very long-term vision? Let's think about this both strategically and tactically and figure out how to move forward. You really arm the reader with a good solid background to be able to think about that a little bit more holistically than an initial marching order, which might be like, just get me a single global payroll provider. That's what I want. To do that, you have to engage a lot of stakeholders, though, right? I love the fact that you talk to the stakeholders and, the complexity and the need to engage a number of different folks in the decision making in order to actually, make something happen, right?
Right.
Because there's so many touch points to HR and payroll and shared services and finance, and everybody had IT. They all have different priorities and different values. So any thoughts on getting all the stakeholders on the same page?
Hey, it's Bob Pulver, host of You Podcast. Human-centric AI, AI-driven transformation, hiring for skills and potential, dynamic workforce ecosystems, responsible innovation. These are some of the themes my expert guests and I chat about, and we certainly geek out on the details. Nothing too technical. I hope you check it out.
Well, that's usually it takes time, Julie, and it also takes an understanding of the priorities of each of these different leaders, right? I think it can be done, and we have done it many times, but you need to be very thoughtful about it and figure out what's in it for them, because it's clear that there's something in it for you. But now, how are you going to translate that into an advantage for the other people in the organization that you need to convince? And very often there are areas of improvement that can be shared, between finance and payroll, for instance, but also between IT and payroll with the shared service center. And sometimes that also means that you have to maybe deviate from your original project plan a little bit and incorporate something that helps your neighbors in other functions. So I always encourage people to really think early about that. Who do you need for your decision? And think carefully about what they need from you.
Yeah, that's a great point. Kind of goes hand in hand with, there was a chapter I really liked around, I think it was, I don't know, remember if it was a chapter title or not, but if anybody has the book in hand, keep it simple, right?
Right.
And beyond the stakeholders, then you were saying, some of the things that you've done in the past, you just have to acknowledge that they're not part of a future efficient delivery model, right?
Right.
And I thought that was gold too. There were so many good nuggets throughout, but that one struck a chord, and it's very hard for clients to do, especially at scale or across multiple countries, right?
Yeah, exactly. And from my global payroll past, I know that a couple of times we engaged with clients early to say, look, you've given us these 10 policies, but this one policy only applies to 5 people, and it will cost you not only 100,000 euros or dollars to implement it, but also 50,000 to maintain it every year. Are you sure you want to do this?
Yeah.
And then you get into the conversation of, maybe we can move these people to another policy, talk to the union, talk to the Works Council. There's always some money involved, but ultimately you save all that money in the next years by not having to move that policy over when it applies to so few people. And there's all kinds of examples like that. That was, the title of the chapter is Keep It Simple. Yes.
Yeah. Excellent. That also ties right into the business case. So you actually addressed the business case in there and talked about finding hidden costs. I think that's important because a lot of times buyers will approach and all they know is they have something very old, and they essentially will say it doesn't cost it. I mean, it's so old it doesn't cost anything, right? And that can really tank a business case. I think you made an observation earlier that that the broad all globe in business case, you don't see those very often, so you have to get more creative and more selective. Any particular thoughts or like a hidden gem way to find costs and the things that will tank a business case, particular things to look for?
Well, the way to find hidden costs is really to understand who has their hands on your payroll, right? Who is involved in the process. And then you will find that very often people outside of HR or people outside of the payroll department play a pretty big role. And if you don't include them in your business case, then you're missing out on costs that you should include, but maybe don't. And if you don't include them, then you don't have a full picture of the cost, and therefore your business case probably will not work. So that is why I always tell people to really think through every aspect of their payroll, who does what, and where are these costs sitting, maybe also third-party vendors that are involved in delivering your payroll. Those types of bills can run up pretty quickly.
It was always surprising to me in my sourcing advisor days how many firms could not put their finger on the real number, and there was just so many things that would pop up as we were building the case that, there's this piece that's done over in this, in this region by this business that doesn't do it the way the other firms do it or the other groups do it. And you don't cover the stuff that was like out there. that even the buyer didn't know that they had, right? They didn't even see it that way. It was always very surprising to me. But you're right. I've literally seen deals fail because the business case just wasn't thorough and it unpacked too much, and or there were, maybe it got loaded down with things it shouldn't have. I've certainly seen that side of the coin too. But yeah, this is an area that I think snags a lot of companies up. Is the business case part of it? They trip up on this piece.
Yeah.
They do. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question, Anita? This is just selfishly. I honed in on the chapter service versus solution. And I thought that was great that you did that. And can you talk a little bit, maybe just real simply, what the difference is and why one sort of makes sense versus another? Because I wonder if people blend the two together a little bit too much when they're buying things.
Yeah. So I think what is important so the question that you need to answer is, are you able to run payroll yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because in certain cases, there's an excellent case to make for procuring a solution and running it yourself. And especially now that there are so many solutions that are sort of predefined for like small and medium businesses, where you can actually have someone do that, run that internally. And maybe it's not always the best way or the cheapest way, but it is possible. Now, if you are currently running the solution in-house with a number of payroll administrators that are going to retire within the next couple of years, then I think you really have to think about adding services to your contract, simply because I know we all want everyone to make a career out of payroll, but the reality is there are not enough people in payroll right now. Yeah, and I don't think it's such an exciting field, or people do not come out of high school and think, oh, I'm going to study to become a payroll administrator. At least I haven't met them yet. That means that we are probably looking at a shortage. Yeah. And it's unlikely that you will be able to hire them for your firm, because if they're there, it's probably more exciting for them to go work at a vendor, right? At a solution provider, because they have career opportunities.
Yeah. Payroll and HR are the product.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you really have to think through, not only do I want a solution or a service, but if it's a solution, am I able to administer and maintain it for the foreseeable future, right?
Do you have the skill set to maintain it and manage it?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a whole other skill set, right?
Yeah.
Excellent. Great. Well, I thought we might also touch on something, Anita, that was that you discussed, kind of the do nothing result, right?
Right.
You've probably heard.
And I love this. I love this because Pete and I started and launched the podcast talking about the do nothing result. So it's a familiar topic.
Yeah.
But I think your book really does some justice at looking at it and saying, okay, well, like sometimes that's the right answer, right?
Right.
Like, what are your thoughts on doing something and doing nothing and everything in between?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, really the question that I ask people is, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? And very often after they have spoken to a vendor, the answer is, oh, we need to replace what we have. But that isn't always necessary. And if you're happy with your current payroll service and it runs well, then why would you go through that headache and risk of moving it to another solution or to another solution provider, knowing what you know now, that it can go wrong, and it does go wrong sometimes, right? I know there are the exceptions, but things will go wrong. And sometimes it's better to take a step back and to think, well, maybe I can postpone this decision a year or maybe 2 years, or maybe I don't have all the information yet that I need. So I'm going to pause it, and then I'm going to pick it up once everything is ready. Or one that I find particularly important, I know my company is involved in an M&A activity. And so my current employee base isn't stable in the sense that by next year it might be double, or the M&A might not go through and we might be the same. But if you are in a situation that is not stable, you cannot go out and procure a new payroll because you don't know what you're solving for. So I really want to tell people or to ask people, always go back to that original question. What problem am I trying to solve? And then what is the simplest way that I can design to solve this?
Yeah, that applying that logic, Anita, to me is what makes the world of, I'll say, global payroll, without any assumptions that means a single vendor or a single solution or a single model. But to me, finding the right size payroll or the right time to move a model toward a strategic vision, it's applying that logic, across a number of different payroll problems to be looked at, and figuring out how to put that roadmap together, and apply that logic in a way that allows you to build a roadmap, to me, is just the funnest part of global payroll.
Yeah, and I think you're totally right. If global payroll might be your end stage, but you don't have to realize it tomorrow, right?
That's right. It's not binary, right?
Right.
It's not yes or no, now or never.
Exactly. You could also, if you have 4 vendors now, maybe standardize on 2. And then in 2 years or so, say, well, then we're going to put everything together. We're ready. Or maybe you say, well, this works. We're not touching it. We're happy with the quality. Everyone is getting paid. Both of them give us their insights. We can combine that data through some other BI tool or analytics tooling. We're happy. Let's not touch it.
Yeah. Or by region, or large country, small country, right? Yeah. I mean, there's so many ways to put that puzzle together. And
exactly.
I find there's not one best way, right? It's very independent to the journey and the footprint and the governance and the things that you have in your own organization. Make one, roadmap better for you and another roadmap better for someone else.
Yeah. As we've talked about before on the show, right? It's not linear, and you're not going to it's sometimes not linear, and sometimes you're not going to pace at the same pace as maybe a peer, someone similar in size. There's just too many different variables, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hey, I know we could go on forever. Does this feel like the right time to share a little bit about, where to find your book and what you're working on next, and see what's going on, Anita, so we can connect folks to you that are interested in knowing more?
Yeah, absolutely. So people can find me on my website, anitalettink.com. Both the book, the link to the book, they find some recordings of some of the keynotes that I did recently on the future of work. And then obviously they can also connect with me on LinkedIn. I write a little post every Tuesday morning in Europe, to keep people, or to give them a little bit of food for thought, or maybe a fun challenge, or an overview of all the ways that HR magazines can use great and quiet in their new titles. And we've seen it all over the past couple of weeks. And I'm always happy to engage in a conversation.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Anita, for coming on. This has been great. We could probably continue to do another episode with you about part 2 and keep asking you questions. But yeah, thank you so much. And I will make sure that I put all of the links to your website, to your Twitter, to your newsletter. I'll share that in our description of the episode, and also make sure our newsletter has that as well. So you have it. But thank you so much for doing this, and thank you for coming on. We'll continue to stay close and keep up to date on your insights.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Julie.
Yeah. Thanks,
You're
Julie.
immortalized. Our guest number 1, Anita. Thank you.
Inaugural guest. Yes. Thank you.
I feel very special and honored.
Yes. Good. We wouldn't have it any other way. No, it's you're always welcome, Anita. And we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.